Check the postmark.
All right, we're going to call this Committee of the Whole special meeting to order. All councilors are present except Councilor Morton, Councilor Null, and Councilor Antipas. And Councilor Antipas and Councilor Null said they may be a little bit late, and Councilor Morton was having some eye surgery today, so she will not be here, she told us. The first item is 2017-0145, establishment of tax rate for the general fund, fiscal year ending 2018. And, Mark, I think it's apropos if you explain where we're at. Hi, Cindy.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Well, let me just start off. You have Cindy's referral memo, and this is really the only difference this year compared to previous years is usually in previous years we have a little bit more certainty in what the state's doing. We don't always have an adopted budget, but we don't have we have never had during my tenure, nor am I aware of the uncertainty. So just for information, primarily for information purposes, you know, ultimately tonight you need to adopt 3 budgets, but the one that I think Mumford Cove and the sewer district is pretty straightforward because we're not relying on any state revenue there. We've updated the revenues for all 3 of these items, but for the general fund, we're still dealing with the uncertainty associated with what dollars are we going to get from the state. And as you all may recall, the proposed budget included 4 scenarios. I chose the second scenario, which was the $5 million reduction in state aid, because we needed to start somewhere. The council, my recollection is that while the council talked about which scenario you wanted to use, and I think generally most of you and in most discussions had scenario 2 in mind. I don't believe you ever formally adopted that scenario, and even if you did, we'd probably be doing the same thing, providing you information on all 4. And that's what we've done. So you have projections, mill rate calculations for all 4 of the scenarios that were talked about in the proposed budget. And in talking to the mayor, we decided to provide a 5th one, just for your information, which was a $3 million reduction as opposed to a $5 million reduction in state aid. Just as another alternative for you to consider. I'm not advocating that. Personally, you know, I put forth a budget with using scenario 2, which was a $5 million reduction. I am certainly not any smarter today than I was on March 15th when we issued the budget. And so in my way of thinking, if I was adopting the budget, I would be using scenario 2. But that's, you know, as I think as the council is aware, when we put the proposed budget together, we do a revenue estimate, projected revenue estimate for the year in question. We're now 3 months smarter in those areas. So part of what Cindy does is updates all those revenues. And I'm sure she'll get into it from a property tax standpoint. We're doing a little bit better than we thought we would. Just before we sent the agenda out, we got notification from the clerk's office that the Brantford Manor had changed hands, and we've got a $200,000 increase in conveyance taxes, so we've taken that into consideration. Some things go up, some things go down. We have historically always done that when we're at this point in the whole budget process. So we updated the revenues, and you have 5 scenarios, including scenario 2, which was the scenario that assumed we were going to get possibly a $5 million reduction in state aid. I have heard nothing to suggest. I think the session's last day.
I did reach out today, this afternoon, to all 3 state legislators and posed the question to them. Any useful information about revenue before we vote tonight? and I did hear from all three. Senator Summers, had said that she thought we were safe going with 3, but she thought it might even be better than that. Christine Conley really wasn't sure. She thought it was looking good, but we felt going lower than 5 was being risky if it was indeed 5. And I spoke with Joe on the phone. He called me and he said that it was that he again felt that the legislators in Hartford were trying to make Groton whole, and he thought we're going to come out good, but couldn't give us a guarantee. Obviously they're still in session and doing that. So there was no definitive answers. A lot of it seemed like it was kind of split down the middle of where we should head. So whatever that's worth. Deb?
So I just have, I don't think I was here for the last meeting, and I'm just got this now, and I'm reading through this, and I just want to make sure I understand the clear difference between where we ended up as a town council and where the RTM ended up, based on the budget progression, just so I'm clear. So under this progression, point 3 is we, as a council, we were using $1,033,840 of the fund balance. And based on point 4, it's saying that the RTM was using $481,258, which maintains the 7.75. So I'm under the impression that the council made a decision to go below the 7.75. No. Okay, so I am obviously missing something. So if you can just make sure I understand.
Okay, the bullet 4 takes into account the adjustments to revenue. When we put the revenue together back in February or March, and then we do look at the revisions for May, we were down, are expecting a reduction of about $564,000 less revenue than we had anticipated. And what that gives us less of a fund balance available to use. We're anticipating that we're going to have to use more fund balance for 17, leaves us less to use for 18.
Oh, okay, that's written, that's not how I read this. That's, okay.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying.
Right. When we did the mill rate after the council's budget, we had anticipated being able to have $1 million of fund balance to use. By the time the RTM got done and we reviewed all of the revenues, it's only 481 that would allow us to maintain the 7 3/4.
Understood.
Right here.
I just wanted to make sure.
Good question.
Do you mind clarifying just a couple of points? One is that the expenditures, and what you say in the 3rd and 4th bullet point, is that the actual spend is a decrease from this year. No matter what scenario we go with, the budget is lower
Than the current year's
than the
budget.
current year's
Yes.
budget.
With the budget for fiscal 17 was the 121 million, and we have an adopted budget of 118.
Okay. And so can you also just clarify the effect of the reval on taxpayers? So if, I believe that because the revaluation came in lower, it affected the town by $500,000, or 0.48, I think it was.
Right.
So I'm trying to get to make sure that the people understand that whatever mill rate increase we have on what is decided tonight, that point, like some people's taxes for this, if you were looking at this year, would have gone down, but because of the real mill rate increase for next year, they're going to go up. But there's a built-in 0.48 mill because
Of the revaluation.
is there a simplistic way for you to explain that?
Well, the reval did after the Board of Assessment Appeals, and with it being, we had anticipated a reduction due to the reval. We had anticipated a much larger reduction. about a year ago. But it was with a 2.2% decrease, and yes, that's equivalent to $1.8 million in taxes, which, so with the reval, does equate to like a $500,000 increase. A mill's about 3.6 million is a mill.
So it's 1.8, okay. Go ahead, Diane.
Mark, do we know yet on if we're going to be cut for this year, that 440,000?
We don't. That's another uncertainty. We have, correct me, we
Yes,
have
we have.
included that in our calculation.
As a reduction, yes, in
As a
revenue.
reduction, but no, that was part of the governor's proposal that has not been acted upon by the legislature.
What do you mean you included it in the reduction?
When I reviewed the revenue
Revenues.
for May, I have assumed that we would not be getting that. We normally would get that payment in June, so I have deducted that. It's not included in revenues.
Okay.
It is part of the reduction of the 564,000.
Okay.
And I would like to just touch base a little bit on the revenue, because we are, although we do have a reduction of the 564,000, the town revenues we did have an increase compared to what we had done in February and March of 449,000, and that was primarily for taxes looking a little bit better, and the conveyance tax, that was a nice bump up to revenue. But these were offset to Board of Education decreases in special ed and impact aid of $500,000, and then to the ECS and the Pequot money, we have put those decreases in there.
The Pequot what?
The Pequot, Mohegan Pequot, that's the grant to the government, the
Oh, okay.
$453,000. Sorry, I tend to use my own terms there.
So to be, again, I want to make sure, I want to make sure I understand.
Sure.
So with the governor's proposed budget cut of this year's money, 445,000, that's in there.
Pardon me?
That is included in. So
Yes.
if that cut wasn't made,
We would have
we
additional.
would have that in our
right.
general fund?
Yes.
Okay.
We would get, if we happen to get that money, normally we get the final payment in June. If we were to get it, yes, it would be an increase to revenues.
Okay. And is, Mark, if we planned on $5 million cut and it was a $3 million cut, we couldn't adjust like the second tax bill? Like there's no way to make an adjustment or
In theory, there's a way, yes, you can send out a second bill that would override the second bill that people get when they get their tax bills in January. Personally, I think it would create absolute and total chaos.
Okay.
Usually, there's a supplemental bill that's sent out, which means you need more money. Sending out a second bill that means less, I think is just going to
Okay.
confuse the banks, the mortgage houses, and money
Escrows.
would simply,
The
well,
cost.
two things. One, the council did have some discussion, and the RTM, about, if the cuts weren't as deep as we thought, that there would be some items that you would maybe want to go back and at least talk about. And two, whatever money, if there is, I'd love for us to be in this situation, whatever money, extra money we get, would simply be there to at a minimum, to help soften whatever the impacts are that may happen next year.
Yep.
There's no, I know our legislators are working very, very hard to minimize the impacts, but I'm not sure that whatever happens in Hartford this year is going to fix the problem. We're probably looking at the same thing possibly next year and the year after. So having those dollars, if in fact that happens, having those dollars in the fund balance account to help soften the impact of next year, whatever happens next year, isn't, in my mind, is not the end of the world. But I do think sending out a revised bill, we can check with CCM, we can check with other towns to see if anybody has done that in the past, but I think we really.
Well, if you're saying it's a bad idea, then I don't.
And not to mention the cost.
That's what I was just going to ask you.
It would
How much
be-
would it be?
Off the top of my head, I would hazard to guess, but it would be We would have to do it for everyone, all of the vehicles. It would be just like doing a complete rebilling of every account.
Okay.
Sorry about, I don't have that exact number.
A ballpark?
Great.
And then to look at the other side of the coin, whether we choose 3 or 5 and we get even less, what's the negative impact of that? How do we address that?
Get less meaning?
Let's get,
Get cut more.
we get cut more.
More. Well, I think then it's going to be an effort to go through back, revisit the budget, and make some decisions on how we hold back the spending reins, both for the town and for the Board of Ed, possibly outside agencies. I mean, we did do that a couple years ago, where town operations, we found out in August, September, there were some issues with tax collection. There was also issues with the funding coming from the state. And town operations didn't really involve the council at that point, but at staff level, we basically clawed back around $600,000 worth of funding. If we're talking, that's going to be difficult to do now, but we're going to have to do, I mean, that would certainly be my recommendation, that once we know what's going on with the state, and if the cut from the state is bigger than the 3 or the 5 or whatever scenario the council cuts, we're going to have to, we're going to have to go to work and try to find those dollars. The only alternative to that is to tap into fund balance, and I certainly would want to be recommending that let's try to find the cuts internally, hiring freeze, whatever it may be, additional CIPs we put on hold, things like that.
So, while we may not have voted on it in caucus, we certainly did vote on scenario 2, so, for the record. And we were pretty strongly, after lots of discussion, voted for that. My question is, we picked scenario 2, $5 million cut, but then after all the issue with the Board of Ed, we went around and around, and finally we gave money back. As I look at it, we didn't cut $5 million. We cut somewhere around 3.8. Is that not right?
From the Board of Ed?
Yeah.
The Board of Ed went from 77.7 million to the 74.9. 2.8, I think.
So we really haven't met the 5 million cut that we were trying to meet, is what my question is.
Yeah, I guess maybe that was a discussion that took place in caucus, but the $5 million from a budget proposal, I wasn't suggesting you needed to cut $5 million. That was just an assumption
To start.
for revenue. Where you were trying to get with respect to cuts, I'm not sure. I don't know that you had a number in mind. But the $5 million scenario should not be interpreted that from at least my standpoint, that was the goal, that maybe you wanted to cut $6 million because of other things. Maybe you wanted to cut $3 million. But ultimately, while the council did put dollars back in, the RTM did cut a little bit more than where the council ended up. And this is the sum of the results of 2 months' worth of deliberations.
Right. 200,000.
So, I brought this up one other time, and I'm gonna ask again. When is the last day that we can vote on this budget? Is today like the end all be all? Is the earth gonna end today? Like you're gonna
The night before Friday. On or before Friday.
On or before Friday.
So,
If the council wanted to consider a different scenario, you could have a meeting Thursday evening. We would need to post it tomorrow. I don't think we're going to know anything more from Hartford.
I don't think we would know anything more if,
Doesn't sound like it.
I know the witching hour is Friday, but we just reconvened on Tuesday, would we like be losing our fingers, toes, and noses by waiting to see if they do something before the weekend? And we could do a firm vote on Tuesday, having a better idea. I know it's dark waters, I'm just asking.
I think you run the risk of a couple of things. I mean, the charter is pretty clear what happens if the council and their RTM doesn't act. And so I certainly would not recommend the council hold off. I think there has been talk in Hartford of passing legislation that would allow towns to reconsider their vote, but or their action on the budget, but I don't think we're going to be any smart. I'm not hearing anything that would suggest to me that we're going to be any smarter in a week in terms of what's going on in Hartford. I mean, I think one of our legislators would have said something to the mayor if, you know, it looks like there's a possibility something can happen. I don't think they did. I think if you moved ahead tonight and you picked a revenue scenario, from a practical standpoint, tax bills we have to be in the process of starting to prepare them. Cindy, by when?
We're in a waiting game now. They're expecting me, they're hoping I'm gonna bring mill rates back to them tomorrow because of the work that has to be done to get those bills processed and out by the end of the month.
Is that your,
Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
what's your deadline for the bills that are going out?
Well, they have to be mailed by the end of the month, but there's a couple of weeks worth of processing that we have to do in order to get the file together. There's a lot of coding they have to do for the banks in order to get the file out, to have the bills printed and then mailed out.
Well, I understand that I can tell what the council has a strong will to keep the 5 million. I myself would consider 3, just because you're looking at the mill rate changing. You're looking at potentially. I don't think overtaxing is the right word because we don't know, but you run the risk of collecting more money than we need to when every dollar counts. So for me, I know that Mark, that the supplemental is the death of us, but I feel that what's coming from the state legislators is they're cautiously optimistic. But I understand what everything's saying. So, Bonnie?
I don't, can you explain why you want to do it? I mean, what's your rationale?
My rationale is that it is an unknown, but I feel like the state legislators are saying that it's not going to be as much as 5, that there's a voice in Hartford that's saying that Groton was hit too hard and they shouldn't be, and it's somewhat of a gamble, and I just feel like 3 million is it's more than a $500,000 back, and so that's where I'm at. But I get it's a risk.
Yeah, and I'm Karen's not here because she had some surgery, but last night we discussed this, and her worry is that we'll have to go back out if we get cut. What we planned on, or even worse, with a supplemental, and that's not good.
I can agree with the mayor because if we budget on 3 million and we get cut to 3 million, we're in a good shape. If we budget for 5 and they cut more, we have to go back to the books and look at it. Whereas in any case, whatever is cut, we're going to have to look at it anyway. But if he cuts a less of amount, we're in good shape.
Can I just add?
And the other thing is, you're saying that your tax records have to go out on the first at the end of the month. What happens if we don't? What happens if we're a week late? It's just a little bit more work for you.
Well, it's not necessarily more work. I mean, what happens when we mail the bills out after July 1st, and the taxpayers are very upset because by statute, the bills are due July 1st.
I don't think taxpayers are going to be upset.
Well, I'm just saying, it's happened when we've mailed them out, and they'll say, you sent me this bill that was due today, not realizing they have 30 days to pay it. But
Under the circumstances, I think the taxpayers of the town of Groton understand what's going on. And if we delay the tax,
can I ask you, how long of a delay are you talking?
maybe a week, just enough to get enough information from the state.
But I will say that I'm not sure what the time frame of the delay is going to be, Rich, because I think that, I don't think they can predict. I think it could be weeks. So that's something certainly to consider. Do you want to say something? So, great.
I got a question. Just as the mayor asked about the second bill, in case we didn't get cut as much, to reduce that second bill, is there an option to increase that second bill so if we had to try to gain?
Well, it would be sent, typically the terminology that's used when you don't calculate the proper mill rate is you send out a supplemental bill to the taxpayers. A number of, I mean, that is, we haven't, I don't believe we've ever done that. There are towns that have done that. Usually it's, you know, either a revenue, there's a shortfall in revenue, or there was a miscalculation or something like that. My observation of other communities that have done that is something you really want to avoid. That's just like opening up a wound a second time. But it is allowed. It absolutely is allowed under state statute.
Deb?
Okay, so here's another question. Oh,
No, I'll wait.
You can go ahead if you want.
Well, I just wanted to add about the 3 million or the 5 million. If we were to go with the 5 million and it turns out that it's less, it's much easier to put money back than to take it away. Last year, and it was 16, it was heart-wrenching to try to find that money, that $600,000 in the budget, and to tell the departments, you know, you just have to do it. It was, a lot of things did not get done, and it was very hard. But it is easier to give it back if we were to turn out better, if it were to be a better scenario on the revenue than we think.
Deb and then Harry.
so here's my thought. If I own a house today and I get taxed for next year, and then next year comes along and say we end up with an extra $2 million in the bank, is my assessment going to be different from this year into next year? Or will it all be assessed the same?
That's the same.
Right.
Okay,
We won't
so-
have revale until 5 years.
Okay, so this is, I gotta talk out loud, you know how I do this sometimes. So, say we go for 5, and say all of a sudden we come back and we're made whole, or 3, or somewhere under 5, it doesn't matter. Everybody's tax bill will, I mean, I'm assuming the people who are sitting at this table either now or after election would make that foremost promise that if we get any money back, it is going to go directly towards your next year's tax bill as far as the assessment is concerned. So,
Not the assessment.
well, but as far as the mill
mill
rate.
rate.
A
It would
reduction
impact
in
the
the
mill
mill
rate.
rate.
So what I'm saying is, for philosophy's sake, I would much rather stick with the 5, knowing that, yes, me personally, who actually own 2 in the town of Groton, I may end up paying a little bit more through this tax year, but knowing if something comes back with the promise that that is going to be a, you know, kind of like a piggy bank windfall for me going into the next year. To me, personally, I would actually be okay with that. I don't know how every other, you know, person in the town feels. And, you know, I almost beg to differ with Rich. How many people actually know what's going to happen to their tax bill yet next year, and who is really paying attention? I don't really know. You know, we like to think that everybody comes out and votes, and half the time only 15% shows up to vote for us. So, you know, you kind of wonder how many people are really paying attention and being educated. But for me personally, I would say I would much rather go in knowing that I'm forecasting less revenue and, oh, hey, look, I just got a windfall, and next year I'm going to see the benefits of that. That's me personally. I don't know if I want to necessarily gamble with the 3 and then all of a sudden we don't get, and someone pulls the rug out from underneath us up there and we're thinking we're going in the right direction. All it takes is 1 vote and here we go south again. Then here we are back at the table trying to figure out where the heck are we going to find $2 million. To me, that is 10 times worse. And I can understand that, moving forward, we really want to make the best choices. But I think banking on less revenue is the smarter choice without necessarily having to do extra bills or a credit or whatever after this billing cycle goes through. But it would definitely have to be a promise that it's going to be made up in the next year. And that's going to go directly towards the bottom line and the mill rate.
Harry?
Yeah, I've been here for a long time, and it's every year it's the same thing. The state finishes their budget after we finish our budget, and we always have this guessing game. In this particular year, we got hit pretty hard. It's kind of like playing poker with the state. We don't know what their whole card is right now. We have to make the best guess and decide whether we're going to call a raise or whatever. And next year, the house will be appraised at the same thing. Mm-hmm. But we have no idea what the revenue is going to be next year, so that's a moving target that we don't know. Mm-hmm. Same scenario this year as next year, and we get more than 5 million or more than 3 million, whatever number we pick. We'll have that money to not only defray whatever revenue source we have next year, regardless of what the scenario is next year, but we also have the possibility of addressing some of those things that we set aside. Mm-hmm. Should we get more money than we think? I'm not willing personally to take the risk to say, yeah, we're going to get, we're only going to get cut $3 million instead of $5 million, but it's still, we don't know what their whole card is.
At first, we were told that it might be 14 million, and then we were told it might be 10 million, and then we went on scenario number 2, hoping it's only 5 million. I haven't seen anything in writing yet to state that it's going to be 5 million or 10 million or even 3 million. I've heard that Senator Summers said that the Republicans put in a great budget, but she also admitted that there were 3 other budgets on the floor at the time. There's 4 budgets. I can't believe that they're going to take our budget and not change it at all, or the Republicans' budget, excuse me. So I'm not willing to gamble on the 3 million either. I think the 5 million, we crippled public works. We're closing schools because of this 5 million. I would rather go to the dentist and have all my teeth pulled than pass a budget with over 8% increase. But I don't think we have a choice at this point. We're between a rock and a hard place. And if we do get money back more than the 5 million cut, I agree with Harry. We put some things on the side of the table saying, look, if we do get more money, we have to look at these things that we cut. So that's my opinion.
Great.
And I see it's for the scenario 2, the $5 million cut, it's an extra $190 per $100,000 assessed value. But I don't see that calculation for the $3 million figure. Do you have that number?
No, I did not do that for,
Just looking at the
I could
difference.
get my calculator and try to do it for you.
Sure.
Okay, yeah, Bonnie.
I agree with Deb, Diane, and Harry that we should stick with what we were using as a guideline.
We've been using this for the last 2 months. We've been using it, the RTM was using it, and it was a good guideline, and we could get severely impacted worse than 5 million. So I'm definitely not for calculating it, and I'd agree with Diane. It is like pulling teeth to pass a budget that's this high.
If you look at attachment 9 in Cindy's memo, essentially, the mill rate, just stick 2 zeros after it. So it'd be $135 per 100,000. It's 190 for scenario 2. I think it pretty much works out that way.
Well, the scenarios 1, 2, 3, and 5 on the left show the increase in the mill rate. So scenario 5 would be the 3 million. So it would be from the 190 to 135 on a $100,000 home.
Yeah, I think, Diane, you're right, and that, and, you know, we've been talking all along about putting stuff back into the budget should we get additional revenue. We've also, we've spent a couple of months, and it's been very trying, because there have been, there's been a big push to make sure we don't spend as much and that we can keep our budget in line. And what it really comes down to is the tax bill. And, you know, we're looking at an opportunity to lessen the tax bill, and it's a risk. But to me, it's a calculated risk. So I think we probably talked about it enough. I think everybody understands it. If anybody has nothing else to say about it, then someone can make a motion if they'd like.
These resolutions on the last page reflect the 5 million, is that correct?
They do. They're based on scenario
I did
2.
look at some of them to make sure that they matched, but I just, so I'll read the first one if you'd like.
Sure.
Mr. Mayor. It's a resolution establishing the tax rate for the general fund taxes due July 1, 2017, whereas the representative town meeting has approved a general fund budget for fiscal year ending June 30, 2018, providing for expenditure appropriations totaling $118,897,132, and whereas the town council estimates cash revenue exclusive of fiscal year 18 current property taxes will total $32,271,904. Now therefore be it resolved that $481,258 is hereby appropriated as fund balance available as of July 1, 2017 to partially meet the expenditure appropriations contained in the fiscal year 18 general fund budget, and be it further resolved that $86,143,970 is the amount that needs to be raised from property taxes, and be it further resolved that the tax rate for taxes due July 1, 2017 is hereby established at 23.63 mils per $1,000 of assessed valuation to raise $86,143,970, and there is a calculation from the grand list to get that, so I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I do have two questions. One question is, well, first, does anybody have any questions? Any other questions? Mark, do you know, or Cindy, do you know, I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel here. There's 169 other communities in the same situation. Do you know generally, I didn't ask people today, but we saw a lot of them at C.O.W., but what are they doing? I mean, they're in the same situation. There's certainly not as much revenue at stake, but...
Maybe a few weeks ago, there was one of the finance directors had surveyed area towns, and he had put together that I can share with you what they were doing. I actually thought about it this morning and would like to know what the towns are doing now that we're closer, that we don't have any more information. And at that point, a lot of people just didn't know what they were going to do. Some people had chosen to, as we were doing, to take some type of a decrease. I would say 99.9% of the towns did not include the teacher retirement. But there were a lot of people struggling over what to include.
I mean, my feeling is that we have an opportunity to lessen the impact on the taxpayer. It's a risk again, but that's what we seem to be all about at the council, is trying to lower people's taxes. And we have, you know, if we make an attempt to lower their taxes because we are assuming a lower, you know, a better deal from the state, and we don't get that better deal from the state, and we had to send out something, at least we tried to lower the taxes. So, Diane?
My opinion is the $5 million cut, scenario 2 is a risk also, because it could be much worse. It could be 7 or 8 or 10.
Or 14.
Greg?
Well, I mean, is there a way to amend this such that we put language in here that if we get cut less, let's say we get to 3, that we can adjust that second tax bill?
Yeah, I don't think you need to do it. I mean, you always have that option to have that discussion.
I would think once the state budget when we finally have the final numbers, then you would be able to have that discussion.
I don't think you need to put it in the resolution. I think I think you always have that option to have that debate and discussion as to, okay, what are we gonna do now?
So you're saying 3 million is a $500,000 less? Is that what you're saying?
It's more than $500,000 less. It's the difference between the 5 million and the 3 million is it's 0.65 mil, it looks like. Is that right? Change in mill rate? So,
Approximately $55 per 100,000.
Right.
Bonnie?
So, just for grins, say I decide to go along with your proposal. If it's 5, or if it's 7, or whatever it is, it's not enough, is that, what do you plan to do to cut? Are you going to give the cut to the Board of Ed?
I can't tell you what, I mean, if it's more than 5 million, what we would
Because it
end
is
up-
ECS cut.
Yeah, I would have to, we'd have to sit down and look at everything. I couldn't commit to you that I would take it all from the Board of Education.
Because I might be willing to do that if it was 100% going to the Board of Ed.
Yeah, and I appreciate your support, but I couldn't make that commitment to you. So, but, you know, one of the questions that was asked and that Bonnie asked, and maybe you know now, is if we did go lower and there did have to be a supplemental, what is the cost of the supplement because would it just adjust the second bill? Would the first bill stay the way that it is and the second bill?
If we had to send out for an additional
Yes.
tax bill, we probably would adjust the second installment for real estate, and we would have to do complete bills for all of the motor vehicles.
Okay. So the second bill, there really wouldn't be a cost because you're sending out the second bill anyway.
When the second bill gets sent out
It's
in
sent with
July,
the-
no.
they
We
get
send them all at
attached
one
together.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
so it would be everything that we're going to do in June, we'd have to do again.
Okay,
We'd have to hit every taxpayer again.
okay.
So it'd
And
be
the
double.
cost of that, we don't know what the cost is.
I'm sorry, I didn't bring my budget with me. And
Okay.
It's the cost of the printing, and I'm thinking it's about,
20 grand.
I want to say like,
20,000.
yeah, I'm thinking about $19,000, and, which is definitely not in the finance budget. I've been coming back for a supplemental myself.
Duly noted. Okay. If there's no other discussion, all those in favor of the moved by Harry, please raise your hand. Opposed? So that passes 4-3.
I know I totally swung.
It's okay. That brings us to 2017-0146, establishment of tax rate for Mumford Cove District Fund.
I'll read it, Mayor. Resolution establishing the tax rate for Mumford Cove District Fund due July 1, 2017. Whereas the representative town meeting has approved a Mumford Cove District Fund budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018, providing for expenditure appropriations totaling $21,028. And whereas the town council estimated cash revenue exclusive of FY 2018 current property taxes will total 0. Now therefore it be resolved that $0 is hereby appropriated as fund balance available as of July 1st, 2017 to partially meet expenditure appropriations contained in the fiscal year 2018 Mumford Cove District Fund budget, and be it further resolved that the tax rate for taxes due for the Mumford Cove District Fund on July 1st, 2017 is hereby established at .34 mils per $1,000 of assessed valuation to raise $21,028, and there's a calculation. I so move.
Second.
We have a motion in a couple of seconds. Any other discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 7-0. And that moves us to 2017-0147, establishment of tax rate for Groton Sewer District Fund. Great.
Resolution establishing tax rate for Groton Sewer District Fund due July 1st, 2017. Whereas the representative town meeting has approved a Groton Sewer District Fund budget for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018, providing for expenditure appropriations totaling $834,176. And whereas the town council estimated cash revenue exclusive of 2018 current property taxes will total $11,000, now therefore be resolved that $200,000 is hereby appointed as fund balance available as of the July 1st, 2017, to partially meet expenditure appropriations contained in the fiscal year 2018 sewer district fund budget, and be it further resolved that the tax rate for taxes due to the Groton Sewer District Fund on July 1st, 2017 is hereby established at 0.27 mils per $1,000 of assessed valuation to raise $623,176. I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 7-0 to 0. Harry?
It's a special meeting, but this is related to our agenda. We just passed establishing the tax rate in committee of the whole by a 4-3 vote, and we're going to adjourn and have a regular council meeting. It takes 5 votes to pass something in a council meeting. I just want to point that out to the council.
Appreciate that.
So,
Thanks, Harry.
yep.
I'm going to move to
I'll move we adjourn.
All right,
Second.
we are adjourned.